To me, Mark Fletcher Jr. has been Miami's offensive MVP so far, but man, that's been an ensemble cast.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday. We made it. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. On this loaded episode, we'll take an early look at Florida State. It's been a weird week because Florida State still needs to play another game before they face Miami. So we're going to learn a lot more tonight. We'll talk about a couple of recruiting notes because Miami's going to have their coaches on the road during this bye week to watch some top flip candidates play. We're going to grade your Miami Hurricanes at the bye week, including Carson Beck and some of the other units out there. We'll talk about Miami's MVPs so far. Our guest today, I think, was one of the top 2 or 3 MVPs in the Sebastian the Ibis suit. One of the greatest of all time. My good friend and former classmate at Miami, Rudy Tomarchio, joins us. It's been a little while. I'm glad you're back, Rudy. How are you?
It's good to be back, man. Yeah, it's been a long sport fishing championship season. Been away from college football and podcasting. Did a couple myself because we're on our road to the championship playoff. So I'm meeting with a couple of the captains myself. So nice to flex these muscles again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And speaking of flexing, Miami's been flexing their running game through the first 4 weeks. And it's like, you got a lot of players to choose from. On the defensive side, I think it's pretty obvious who the MVP is so far. But on the offensive side, I was thinking about this week, Rudy, and I think I lean to Mark Fletcher Jr., who has he's second in the ACC in rushing right now at 388 yards. He's second to Hollywood Smothers at NC State, who's like 80% of that team's offense, it seems. So, I mean, Fletcher's, doing good things with a little bit less of a workload. Fletch already has 5 rushing touchdowns on the season, which is pretty insane. Now, he's the guy he shares the backfield with, Marty Brown, has also had a really good season. I thought he was the MVP of the Florida game in particular. If I was giving this out last week, I probably would have said Carson Beck, but, with the way he played against Florida, I just think Fletcher's been more consistent. Do you also have Fletcher as your offensive MVP, or do you maybe look a different way?
Well, first off, is Hollywood Smothers not like Kenton Gibbs' favorite name in NC State history? Because that's quite known for a running back, especially a guy who's going to be a bruiser. To go back to our team and MVPs for a second, I think it's fair to say that you can give the MVP to the offensive line because what they've been able to do, like Mark Fletcher doesn't get those holes without his offensive line. And if you look at all of the yards after contact that both him and Marty Brown are getting, I mean, just the amount of pushing and moving the piles. It's not a one-person job. Yes, they've been responsible for most of the pre-snap penalties, given what's been going on with the center with Brockemeyer. But at the same time, I don't think you can't go wrong with picking anybody on that front line for Miami between Mark Fletcher, Marty Brown, or anybody on the offensive line, CeCe Maui Noah, Inez Cooper, Samson, as you like to say, the pancake honcho, Okunlola. Like, you can't go wrong with any of those choices because they're doing what Miami is, supposed to be doing under this Mario Cristobal coaching staff, which is be physical, lean on teams, really take the air out of their sails late in the game because all of that ball control, all that time of possession means something in the end.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's a good shout. And also, like, the offensive line, that's a group that it's okay to spotlight the entire unit. I mean, it's the only unit in football that has an award that goes out to the entire group, the Joe Moore Award, and not just individual awards. So I think I can get with you on that one. Now, on the defensive side, it's a really short discussion. Rueben Hurricane Bain, top graded player in the entire country, regardless of position. Talked about him with Dalton Wasserman at Pro Football Focus yesterday. But all right, so let's say beyond Rueben Bain, who's been your next man up in terms of second best defensive player so far?
How could it not be Akeem Mesidor? They're usually the two that are meeting at the quarterback anyway. And watching the versatility that they have when it comes to whether they're lined up as two ends on either side or when they're lined up on the same side of the line, or when it's like Mesidor and a posse and then you have Rueben Bain on an island, on his own with a really wide split. I think it's really cool to watch the two of them work together and both, either meet at a running back, meet at a quarterback. I mean, just look at Mesidor's change. Just if you take a highlight clip from every year that he's been at Miami and watch the transformation of his body and see where he's gone from being a little slimmer to a little bigger to now being back to kind of where he was year one, but just so much more explosive. I mean, you could say the same thing about Rueben Bain. He's always been kind of a small, like they used to say he's undersized, but he's explosive and powerful. So between the two of them, they're the two shining lights so far.
And 4 games in for Akeem Mesidor, I always think about a conversation I had with him in July at the ACC Media Days where, like, I asked him, why did you decide not to come out last year? Because people thought he might go pro. And he told me, like, it was a simple decision for him. If he had gone out last year, he would have been third day to undrafted, right? But he gambled on himself. He said, I'm coming back this year, and I truly believe I'm going to have a great year. Defense is going to have a great year, and I'm going to raise my draft stock immensely. And so far, again, there's a lot of football left to play, Rudy, but so far, Akeem Mesidor is doing it. Like Wasserman from Pro Football Focus told me yesterday, he could even be a first-round draft pick, but like a second-day guy at worst. So you compare that to undrafted free agent to third day, where his stock was last year. The gamble Akeem Mesidor made on himself is already paying off.
Yeah, let's be honest. A lot of the so-called experts that are grading these guys for a draft stock are some of the same guys that vote in the top 25 polls when it comes to how much football they actually watch and how much they're looking at teams. Like, look at the draft boards from all of the years, and usually finding that teams that are on players from more successful teams are getting drafted regardless of talent. So if you're Akeem Mesidor and you have that defensive year that Miami did outside of his abilities, just schematically, how many yards they gave up, how many points they gave up, someone's going to look at you and say, well, wait, you were on that defense. How come you didn't make much more of a difference? Not knowing that it's more scheme than talent, I guess, when it comes to how you set these guys up for success. And what we've seen this year is that Corey Hetherman's scheme and the way that he's allowing them to play freely and how they're all swarming to the football, it's a different thing. It's so much better for his draft stock, and it's so much better for Miami as a reputation-based defense. So, hey, if Miami finishes in the college football playoff, let's not get ahead of ourselves and say national title. But if they're anywhere near that discussion, it raises the collective draft stock of all of their players.
Well, you said to me before the show, maybe Corey Hetherman's the MVP on defense. I know, it's kind of a cheat code to give it to a coach, but it's been so different. And obviously the personnel has also gotten better, but it's not all personnel. Like, a lot of it is scheme. When you talk about swarming, like Bain said it after the Florida game, that there's usually 7-8 guys on defense on the ball and on the tackle, but he wants it to be all 11. Like, that's what Bain wants. I think that's what Hetherman wants.
Yeah, I mean, let's break this down, right? Because I think we can get ahead of ourselves when it comes to scheme versus talent versus evaluation. What's been nice is this is kind of, as of right now, I mean, we're 4 games into the season. We haven't seen really a blip out of that defense yet. But from what it looks like, it's this perfect combination of they went out and got the guys that they needed to, because how many teams can whiff in the transfer portal when it comes to finding a guy that might be a good talent but doesn't really fit your look? They so far have hit home runs on all of them defensively. In terms of a scheme, it goes back to your classic Miami defense that you are swarming to the ball, you're hitting violently, you're not out of position at all, you're not being beat sideline to sideline like Miami has been for the past couple of years. Then it's also just unlocking that natural talent that the players have, because how many times have we seen over the years where players kind of look like they're handcuffed or they're thinking too much, or the scheme doesn't meet the talent of what they've played over the course of their lives before they come into college football. So it's nice to see that everything has worked together so far. Fingers crossed it keeps going that way, but you can't really poke a hole in that defense right now and that philosophy that they're playing with.
Well, we'll take a look at the offense again when we come back, because I'm really curious to hear Rudy's grade so far on Carson Beck 4 games in. You want to keep it locked right here. We'll also take an early look at Florida State. We are only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than just put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward, Marty Brown, who I thought was Miami's MVP offensively in the Florida game, the big touchdown he scored to make it 19-7 Miami. That's the one where we could kick our feet up and exhale a little bit, where you knew the Gator was getting put away. And Brown in that game, over 150 total yards, 2 touchdowns scored. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I are going to have a new episode later today on Friday, where we're going to look at like the 4 or 5 biggest games involving ACC teams this weekend, including Florida State on the road at Charlottesville, Virginia tonight. Miami, of course, is off this weekend, so we'll be kicking our feet up and watching all the other games. And on that note, Rudy, as we're, later tonight, about, 10, 11 hours after this conversation we're having, Florida State plays at Charlottesville, Virginia. Do you give Virginia a chance to pull off the upset? How do you view that game?
I haven't seen enough of Virginia to whether I think they have a chance or not, but I think we're going to learn a lot more about Florida State after this week because, here's the thing about Florida State. I was out of town, so I missed that Notre Dame game, but I was in Alabama while that game was happening. So I had a lot of unhappy people around me just about the sport and watching the game go through. And I think what we're going to figure out is how much of this is Florida State imposing its will on opponents and how much of this was Alabama just didn't want to be there. And it felt like, as much as you've seen Alabama kind of respond in the last couple of weeks, they're not exactly playing, top 5 talent or top 10 teams at the moment. But there was just from being Miami Hurricane fans and seeing disinterested Miami teams over the years, that looked very much like a disinterested Alabama team. So we'll see if, is it scheme? Is it talent? Is it a combination of both that's giving Florida State this rush right now? And we'll learn a lot about them when we go up there in Tallahassee.
Yeah, and your early feeling on that game, Rudy, in terms of, what we've seen from Miami at the line of scrimmage, Miami's running game, Miami's defense, these are all things that tend to travel very well. It's be the first time Miami travels this season. Have not played a road game yet. Our first road game is going to be in that, that raucous, obnoxious stadium with that war chant blasting in our ears for 3+ hours. How do you expect that game to go?
Well, think about it. It's going to be blasting in their ears for the better part of 2+ weeks because they have a bye week and then they have game week for Florida State. So you get 2 Florida State weeks. Lucky them to have that war chant blasting in their ears in the IPF over and over again. Look, I think when you look at other Miami teams, like this is a team that wants to play. This is a team that wants to beat everybody. You could just see it in how they carry themselves, how they speak very confidently. Again, it's confidence. It's not them just talking smack for the sake of talking smack. I see Miami traveling very well for that game, between the running game, between the defense. I mean, those are 2 things that you want to take with you on the road. Those are 2 things that you don't lose. And those 2 things put you in every single game because your lead is safe when you have a good running game. Your lead is safe when you have a lights out defense. It'll be a great test for Miami defensively for sure, because you're talking about the most up-tempo offense that you'll see, but I'm not going to lie. Florida State so far kind of looks like last year's SMU team, where, yes, they look great offensively. Yes, they put up a lot of points. They'll win a lot of games, but we know Rhett Lashley's offense from Miami. We know how it works. We know where it's successful. It's against teams that are not disciplined, against teams that are not physical. Well, Miami's both of those things so far. Those are usually the ways you counter a very fast misdirection type of offense.
Let's talk about Miami's starting quarterback, who, by the way, despite not having that great of a game against Florida, On 3 Sports still has him 5th in their Heisman Trophy poll coming out of last week. Rueben Bain, they have 6th, by the way. I think he can continue to rise up that chart. But Beck, Rudy was virtually flawless the first 2 games. Was really good against USF despite the 2 interceptions. Still played really well in that game. And then I don't know if it's Florida defensively, if it was the rain. He didn't play well against the Gators, relatively speaking. So what letter grade do you give Carson Beck so far?
I mean, over the course of the season, how could you not put him somewhere between like a B+ and an A-? Because, like, yes, he's thrown 3 picks, but he hasn't been the reason that you've lost a game. You haven't lost one.
Right.
And he hasn't done anything that we have high standards. Yes. There are some open throws that he's missed so far this year. He's had some get away from him for sure. But I think if you look at what we were expecting, we didn't know what we were going to get out of Carson Beck this year. So far, I think he's exceeded those preseason expectations of knowing he's coming back from an injury. I mean, look, the same excuse that they use for DJ Lagway, saying that he's only had, 5 practices before the season. Cool. Yeah, Carson Beck was practicing. He wasn't really throwing until the beginning of the fall. Hasn't seemed to hurt him yet. He's actually developed, rhythm with his receivers. It didn't really look that way against Florida for a number of reasons. But we haven't really seen Miami play a full, clean, rain-free game so far this year.
Yeah.
So there's opportunities to open up the offense. And something else that I think a few people were talking about this, in the week since Florida, but Miami, when they say need to open up the playbook and do stuff, this is week 4. Like we're not going to give away everything in our playbook and put everything on film so early in the year. So I almost looked at it as Miami played Florida with respect when it came to their defense, but they also played Florida with disrespect in the sense of the way that Miami played Florida State last year. We're just going to run our basic bare bones offense and beat you that way. Why do we need to show anything else on film that we haven't done already?
Yeah, I agree with that 1,000%. So you got a B+, A- range for Carson Beck so far. What about the entire offense? I give the unit, for me, I go like A-. Had they had more in the passing game against Florida, I'd be like a solid A+. But I'm going to be they've obviously been able to run the ball. They've been able to move people and move bodies. Have had success through the air. I'll give them an A-.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like between A-, I'm going to go A-/B+, only because I want to see every unit excel out there. And so far, all of them have, with the exception of one, and that's been the tight ends. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, we've seen some great things so far, but there was a few targets early in that Florida game where you're just watching, your backup tight end go, oh, there's multiple times this season where it doesn't look like he knows the ball is coming to him or that the play is designed with him as an option or a check down. And I think once we see a collective, complete tight end performance, we can't say that this offense is clicking on all cylinders yet.
I think I go solid A for both the defense and special teams. I mean, there's been nothing to complain about. The only thing the special teams hasn't done is a return touchdown, at least not yet, but have had better returns than last year. The kicking game, I mean, outside of the bad snap against Notre Dame, the kicking game and the kicker have been perfect so far. So I give A to both those units.
Might have puckered a little bit when there was a return possibility on one of the kickoffs against Florida to say like it didn't sail out of the end zone. So that was something to know. Like, hey, it seemed like through those first couple of games that the team order was, I want that ball hitting the back of the end zone no matter what, because we don't need to put ourselves out there. If you can hold a team to 0 return yards and kick a bunch of kickoffs because you're putting touchdowns on the board, that's a great recipe for success.
Yeah, no doubt. And yeah, I mean, listen, the defense. I mean, they've given up a couple of explosive passing games on the season, but it's like not enough reason to downgrade it from an A, because if you watch other college football games, explosive plays happen in every single game, and Miami's defense has been better than probably 95 of the other defenses I've watched so far this season. So I stick with an A for them. There's really no reason to downgrade Hetherman's unit.
Yeah, you take enough shots. I mean, you're going to hit one. It's like every blind squirrel finds an acorn at some point in time. So if you take enough deep shots, you're going to do it. I think that's something we've seen a lot with these different quarterbacks we've played so far. And I think we might see the same thing with Tommy Castellanos is, they're running for their lives. So if they are getting a moment, it's usually a broken play where it's like you're running under duress and somebody just happens to come open because you just can't keep somebody like under wraps for more than, 5 seconds or so. So I think that's going to happen from time to time, but you live with those.
Yeah. Well, when we come back, a couple things I want to get into, including being that this is the bye week, Miami's coaches are going to be visiting some of the most important class of 2026 flip targets. A lot of people have been asking me about Gator committed tight end Isaiah Kent. You can't imagine the Gators have a lot of recruiting momentum right now. There is a Miami related update there. Safety Blake Stewart committed to Clemson, also a team that doesn't have much momentum right now. And Oregon does have momentum, but still a 5-star committed edge rusher, Anthony Tank Jones, committed to Oregon. Miami's been working hard on that one, so we'll get into that. Plus, you guys know, of course, Rudy is a former Sebastian the Ibis. I was watching Sebastian just really being chummy with Michael Irvin on the side. It wasn't Rudy in the suit, the current Sebastian. So I'm wondering from Rudy what his best experiences were with legendary Miami players when he was in the bird suit. You want to keep it locked right here. We are not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, we're nowhere near done with DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, and it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For your Miami Hurricanes, you know who's on a streak? Rueben Hurricane Bain. I think it's fair to say he delivered in a big way. Rueben Bain with 10 quarterback pressures, 7 tackles, tackle for loss, a sack against Florida. When the pressure was on, Rueben Bain came through, no hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching Hurricane Bain week after week, you know that performance wasn't a fluke. He is on a streak. Just like Bain delivers for the Hurricanes, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday that you order. Stack it up all season. You could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period goes through November 18th. Folks, we are also proudly brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere, get that boost when you need it. I love the grape flavor. That's been my flavor for over a decade. It's just so delicious, and I start to feel the boost even before I drink it, which is awesome. And guys, honestly, I love how fast 5-Hour kicks in, and it's sugar-free, so I don't have to worry about crashing later. Enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon today. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We got former Sebastian the Ibis, Rudy Tomarchio with us. So, Rudy, I was looking at, by the way, Michael Irvin went so crazy on the hurricane siren noise machine, whatever we call that. Like, and when I was at the game, I'm like, I've never heard the siren make that sound before. And then when I watched it back on TV, the guy was cranking it like he had about 25-hour energy shots before he went on that thing. And he had the great moments there with Sebastian the Ibis. So when you were in the suit for 4 years, did you have any great moments either with legendary former players or even some of the current players who were on the team, like Calais Campbell, who went on to be a legend when you were in the suit?
We could do an entire probably 2 or 3 episodes about all the different people that I've run into. I thought that crank on the hurricane siren was going to break off too, the way that Michael was rounding it. But I mean, look, between hurricane players and even just general celebrities, I mean, I remember one of my first really cool appearances was going to Wheel of Fortune and meeting, Pat Sajak and Vanna White and going out there. I missed the Clemson game where we beat them in overtime with that Kenny Phillips interception because of that appearance. So I couldn't fly straight out to Clemson afterwards. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson comes to mind. There was a few times we, got to meet him and Danny Garcia between movie premieres and unfortunately that last game in the Orange Bowl where he, sent us out of the smoke. Jimmy Johnson being on the sideline and pregame where he was at the 50-yard line and talking to him and Michael Irvin, other former players. So something that they used to do for the ACC championship game is they used to invite every single school's mascot, and they would invite honor like an ACC legend pregame. Granted, this was like our first 2 years in the conference, so they're just honoring Miami legends. They weren't ACC legends, but George Myra Sr. was the first one that I got to meet out of there. The Matador, Gino Toretta, I got to meet. So when I run into Gino now walking around the stadium, I always remind him, like, yeah, I was the guy in the suit when you had your daughter up on your shoulder. He goes, oh, she's about to graduate college. And,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, the Grays definitely hurt a little more when you hear things like that from over the years. But I mean, yeah, those years were a who's who. So we can go back to like some of your colleagues over at WQAM. So like Brian Monroe, for example, who we have some really fun stories from, like the FIU brawl in those days. And if you look at that last post that Miami Hurricanes actually put out with like their series of like the hardest Miami Hurricane photos out there, you got Kareem Brown with that championship belt. There's a whole story about that thing too. So there's a Devin Hester,
Oh man, yeah.
Greg Olson,
yeah.
John Beeson, like all these guys came through around that same time. So there's fun stories with all of them between being on the field, on the sidelines, and yeah, Calais Campbell too, since he was a freshman the same year that I was, and he came out of Denver. I think Denver South was their high school. He played tight end and defensive line. Could you imagine? Can you imagine trying to defend Calais Campbell on a scene?
Honestly, I kind of wish Larry Coker had given him some offensive snaps too. I mean, you line up Calais Campbell in the red zone. Who's stopping that dude? Like, why did we not do that? He could have won a Heisman here.
Imagine that additional tight end that you'd have, because that year, like 2004, his freshman year, I think he redshirted, but you had Buck Ortega was one of the tight ends. He had moved over from quarterback to tight end.
Yeah.
Then you had Greg Olson, who was just starting his
Yeah.
first year of eligibility. Kevin Everett, who was on that team. Hey, you want to run a 4 tight end set like Miami does sometimes? Calais Campbell would be a great option.
That's really awesome. A couple of recruiting notes heading into the weekend, and there's more than I even have time to mention. But I found a few players that I know my audience is interested in. People always asking me about jumbo tight end Hezay Kent from Brunswick, Georgia, who Miami obviously has recruited heavily. He committed to Florida during the offseason. I think Florida is going to have a tough time holding on to their class of 2026, whether Napier gets fired or not. He is going to get fired. It's only a matter of time. So I understand Miami is going to be visiting Hezay Kent this weekend, probably going out to his high school game. So, again, 4-star tight end or offensive tackle. But I think Miami was recruiting him as a tight end. That's the position he wants to play. He's 6'6", 310 pounds. So that dude is going to be a matchup problem wherever he ends up signing. Miami is also going to be visiting with Woodward Academy in Atlanta, Georgia, 3-star safety Blake Stewart, who's committed to Clemson. Clemson, obviously, another school that's kind of in a, Dabo's not getting fired like Billy is, but, Clemson's in a bit of a tailspin right now. Miami's still recruiting Blake Stewart, and Miami is still recruiting 5-star edge rusher Anthony Tank Jones out of Mobile, Alabama, who's currently committed to Oregon. Tank Jones, Rudy, has been down to 2 Miami games already. So he's visited Miami multiple times, and Miami is sending Jason Taylor out to see him this weekend. So let's hope, and I know Tank has been paying attention to what Rueben Bain and Akeem Mesidor are doing. He can be the next one in if he wants to be.
I mean, when you look at that scheme, like, how do you not want to come and play with these guys? How do you not want to come and play for a coach like that? Because it's one thing where you can be individually highlighted, but then also, you have so many, there's so many ways that they get to the quarterback with just 4, which is incredible. I mean, I think that's something that you saw the older Miami defenses do very, very successfully. Like, again, we go back to schemes and identity. And when you see teams that they don't have to, those old Randy Shannon defenses, they were basic in the idea that they didn't run a lot of like complicated coverages or a lot of complicated blitz packages. It was more of, we're going to get home with 4, and you're probably not going to have enough time to find somebody open by the time, maybe they beat coverage.
Yeah, so. Right. Yeah, man. So hopefully Miami can continue to make progress with some of these top flip targets on the trail. And hopefully Miami beats Florida State next week, because that would be another big time notch on your belt if you can get that done. So obviously, folks, next week we're going to be full steam ahead on Miami versus FSU. This was kind of a teaser week since FSU still has another game to play. So huge thank you to Rudy. You could follow him on X at Rudy Tomarchio, Tomarchio. Spell it the Italian way, which I love. He's you're an Argentinian, I guess, with Italian heritage, if I have that right.
As most of us do. I mean, it's either German heritage or Italian heritage, which is the side that I'm on, and then my mom's Italian too. So it all goes back to somewhere on that boot in the islands eventually.
It always does, right? We'll talk to everyone again next time. Make sure you like and subscribe. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Subscribe on YouTube, and we'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.